reviews of what occurred.
And then we still have to decide what to do about it.
But it wouldn't be 20 hours, as I indicated, then it would be more like half that. And his rate is $170 an hour, just so you know. He's certified municipal attorney.
Well,
It's $1,850. All right. The problem started by somebody not paying attention to Keith's letter that said no one comes on my property, no exceptions. This is not hard to figure out. Now, hey, if Frank overlooked it, I say, Mark, you manage the office, you manage your staff, you should be managing Frank. He works under you. All right, so when something like that comes in, maybe when it comes into the town clerk, unless you're out of town, then they need to make sure that you get it, and then you direct Frank to go out and check it out.
Vice Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Keith said it was a code complaint, which I wouldn't necessarily see.
no, it's not code complaint. It was just the debris.
No. What he's talking about, no trespassing, was Keith indicated that in a code complaint.
I filed a code enforcement complaint against the town of Waxahachie Roads for failure to pick up debris when the taxpayers are paying for it. It is related to Waste Pro, Frank. Job description covers Waste Pro,
Okay.
but the fact remains what occurred. I am not asking for execution. I'm not asking for anything other than a thorough investigation by this town government to understand what has occurred and prevent it ever occurring again, not only to me, but to any other citizen of the town of Waxahachie Roads. You don't need to be dealing with this. My day was beautiful until that occurred. And I've got shotgun by my door. And I haven't had that out in 12 years. And that was when I lived down in Keys. So it is something I'm very upset that the motion to investigate is turned down. But that's y'all's decision, and I have to live by it.
All right.
I would just say that up until the minute he just spoke, facts were in dispute, and they still are in dispute. But some of those facts weren't even known until that minute. So I do think that that's the benefit of an investigation. Sit down and listen to Keith and see everything he has to say, and they'll listen to Frank and see everything he has to say. Then they'll report it in a way that we can read it and understand it. But he, once again, he's not satisfied, so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right.
Following up on what we're talking about, we will give a consensus direction to Mark to do something different than what has been the previous process. Let me ask Ryan to structure some kind of either direction or whatnot, motion. We would back this up so we can move on to
Well, as Keith just mentioned, he said he wanted an investigation, but ultimately the reason why he wants an investigation is because he doesn't want something like this to happen again. And ultimately, that's going to be what we're going to have to decide on, even with an investigation, because obviously none of us wants this to happen again. So I still don't believe in an investigation, because however Frank dialogued with Keith, that is not going to happen again. We just have to decide on how it's going to happen. Are we going to, just tell Frank, this is how you need to behave in front of residents, or are we going to say Frank doesn't dialogue with residents? If we not dialoguing with residents at all, that completely eliminates that chance of happening again. I think Frank probably has learned his lesson from this, and probably won't be joking around as much, or making those types of comments to people. But I'm not sure I'm willing to risk it, just because, I don't need to have a resident upset with something like this. I understand like Pat's frustration with Waste Pro. I completely understand that. I'll be pissed off as well, but to have someone like Keith pissed off because of how one of our vendors dialogued with him, that's a problem that could have been easily avoided. So I think the council needs to decide on how to deal with it.
Point for consideration, I mean, especially as it relates to the solid waste complaints. Yes, we have this Easy Track system now that we're using, that it's a very good system. I'd be happy to show it to anyone that wants to come in, but it does track the complaints, and you can address a lot of the complaints through the system. My concern is, though, as far as trying to limit Frank from talking to anybody, there are some complaints where he probably has to go out initially to talk to somebody to find out what's going on. So, it kind of puts both me and him in a tough situation there. When does he talk to somebody? When does he to properly investigate a matter? I mean, you do it take that into consideration. It makes it very difficult to navigate on this.
Oh,
Seems to me like Frank's been judged guilty here, we're trying to figure out what to do to it. And I don't judge Frank guilty at all, I don't judge what Keith's saying is incorrect, but I don't judge at this point, because there's nowhere near the kind of information we need to make a judgment. To say that Frank's not gonna talk to anybody, we might as well just say, just fire him. What's he gonna do? We're gonna have Frank say something, and then he's gonna come and say something at the town office, and then somebody's gonna get around and send somebody a memo someday, and Mr. Kavanaugh's gonna trip out because no one will have done anything ever, because, so the problem is, either Frank's wrong, and he needs to go, or he needs to be disciplined, or not. But to just us, based on what happened here tonight, when Keith himself said he thinks an investigation is warranted, not that we just listen to his word and take it and act. I think to do something is very premature and also is judgmental on Frank. But y'all do what you want, make a motion, we'll vote and get home, because this is crazy.
yeah, this is way. All right. Jim made a motion.
All right, well, I'll restate my motion, so it's
Okay.
regurgitated. That Frank act as investigator only, report his findings back to the town, and the town responds in whatever way they think is appropriate back to the complainant relative to waste flow.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Ryan. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. All right, passes 3-2. And, all right, moving on to, any other public comments? I've got the biggest pile of public comments before I shut it at the end of the year. Mike?
Just real quick follow-up at the last meeting, consensus of the town council was to take a look at the code relating to preemption issues for the wildlife commission. And so we have begun that review. Fleischman has begun to look at the code and collect it, much like we did when the issue of the gun ordinance, to start collecting the ones that could possibly be under that umbrella. I've also reached out to the general counsel's office and at the Florida Wildlife Commission, and the attorney who wrote the memo back in 2007 is still there, and I did speak with her, and she did give me some advice and some suggestions on how we go about this review, which we're going to factor in. So that it's going to look a little more complicated than just doing a strike through like we did with the guns. But we have begun that review. I didn't want you to think that we had let that one slide.
Okay.
Come back sometime in August, possible?
I would expect to, yes.
All right, moving to town council member comments. Jim, can start off?
Thank everybody for coming tonight. Have a good evening. Have a great board.
Okay. Ryan?
Thanks for coming, and, good night.
Ron, be safe going home.
I know we made people happy tonight. I guess this is why we get the big bucks, would be my joke, but, we know that's not true. But, you know, one little quote, and this is a political quote, it says, "Any jackass can tear down a barn, it takes a carpenter to build it." I think we really ought to realize that about this town. Quit tearing it down, try to build it up and work together. Apparently, 8,000 acres ain't big enough for all of us. People gotta try to run people out of town, people gotta say this one shouldn't have a job, you know. It's cliche, but we do need to work together, we do need to live together, we need to cooperate. But I do not see that in all reality is what our future is. So, with that, good night, thanks for staying so long.
And again, thank you all. I think if we had the investigation, it could have cleared certain people or not, but it would give us a little more direction for the council. So thank you all for coming, and have a good board. What do you need me to What's your autograph?
That's it? For how many weeks?
I got a bag, don't you worry.
Are you gonna bring Ronnie?
Bring him where?
He's up eight.
I was eating this late,
Well,
but
then he's gotta go home. Oh, he's gotta go get a little light. He needs to get something. And then we'll get him on, then whether he sticks to it. Okay. Then he can come back and bring Yeah? Tomorrow is tomorrow.
yeah, I'm sure it's not.
We're a little bit down. Good idea, try that machine.
Talk about